Sir. Sit on the gravel. Mercer stood over Malcolm as the crowd at Parker's corner watched in silence. Malcolm lowered himself calmly and said, "Make sure you write down the exact amount." Then a worn brass coin slipped from his jacket. Public integrity stamped across its face. Mercer never saw it. Cody did. And while Mercer held the $2,300, a hidden recorder was still running. $2,300. Sergeant Dale Mercer counted the bills slowly enough for everyone to see. 23 crisp hundreds passed through his fingers beneath the hard Virginia sun before he slid them into a clear evidence pouch. The empty white envelope fluttered against the hood of an aging gray Honda Accord. Malcolm Reed stood 3 feet away. At 46, he was broad-shouldered without being imposing, dressed in worn work boots, dark pants, and a faded brown jacket that looked better suited to unloading boxes than conducting important business. Sweat had gathered along his temples. Dust clung to the cuffs of his pants. Mercer looked him over and smiled. Not warmly. It was the smile of a man who believed he had already decided what another person was worth. "This yours?" "Yes." Malcolm's voice was quiet. Mercer held up the pouch. "All 2,300? "Yes. And I'm supposed to believe you just ride around carrying this kind of cash." Malcolm's eyes moved briefly toward Deputy Cody Bennett. Cody stood beside the open passenger door of the Honda. 28 years old, clean uniform, close-cropped hair. He had been avoiding Malcolm's eyes ever since the envelope came out of the center console. Malcolm turned back to Mercer. "There is documentation with the money." Mercer glanced at the white bank slip still lying inside the open envelope. He made no attempt to read it. Instead, he sealed the pouch. The plastic snapped shut. Malcolm watched the seal close over his money. "I do not consent to that seizure." Mercer's smile widened. "That's the nice thing about consent. Sometimes I don't need yours." Across the highway shoulder, Parker's Corner Market shimmered in the heat. Its faded red sign stood above a low brick building with 2 gas pumps, a small restaurant counter, and broad front windows reflecting the afternoon glare. People were watching. A man beside a pickup had stopped pumping gas. 2 customers stood behind the restaurant glass. Another motorist lingered near the ice machine. Nobody came closer. Nobody said a word. Traffic rushed past at 70 miles an hour, sending hot gusts of dust across the shoulder. Malcolm looked toward the witnesses only once, then back at Mercer. There was no plea in his expression, no anger either. That seemed to bother Mercer. Most people argued by now. Some became frightened. Some started explaining themselves too quickly. Mercer understood those reactions. He knew what to do with fear. Malcolm's calm gave him nothing. Mercer tapped the evidence pouch against his palm. "So what were you planning to buy?" "I've already answered your questions. I'm asking another one. And I'm asking that the withdrawal slip be included with whatever paperwork you're preparing." Mercer stared at him. For several seconds, only the cicadas and highway traffic filled the silence. Then Mercer gave a short laugh. "You always talk like this?" "Like what?" "Like somebody's taking minutes at a board meeting." Cody shifted beside the Honda. Mercer noticed. "Something wrong, Bennett?" "No, Sergeant." "Then finish checking the car." Cody leaned back inside. Malcolm remained where Mercer had ordered him to stand. The Honda's doors were open. The glove compartment hung down. Papers from the console rested on the passenger seat. A bottle of water rolled slowly along the floorboard each time a truck shook the pavement. There was something particularly violating about seeing an ordinary car opened that way. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply exposed. Malcolm's sunglasses sat in the cup holder. A folded grocery receipt lay beside them. A paperback rested beneath the passenger seat. Small pieces of a private life turned into objects for inspection. Mercer stepped closer. "You know what your problem is?" Malcolm met his eyes. "I don't believe I have one." That answer erased Mercer's smile. "You got stopped carrying $2,300 in cash." Carrying cash isn't a crime. Didn't say it was. You searched my vehicle after I told you I did not consent. I heard what you said. And now you're taking documented money without charging me with anything. Mercer leaned nearer. His voice dropped. You trying to tell me how to do my job? No, Malcolm paused. I'm making sure we both remember how you did it. Cody stopped moving inside the car. For one brief second, nobody did. Mercer's face tightened. The silence from Parker's corner suddenly felt closer. Mercer turned toward the market. He could see silhouettes behind the windows. Then he looked back at Malcolm. Hands on the hood. Malcolm did not move. Mercer's hand settled near his belt. I said hands on the hood. Malcolm walked to the Honda. He placed both palms flat against the sun-heated metal. The hood was almost too hot to touch. He did not pull away. Mercer searched him again. Pockets, waistband, jacket. Nothing. No weapon, no contraband. Nothing that explained the suspicion except the suspicion itself. Cody stood several feet away now. His face had changed. Malcolm noticed. Mercer did not. Turn around. Malcolm turned. Mercer pointed toward the shoulder. Sit down. Malcolm looked at the gravel, then at Mercer. You want me sitting there? You having trouble understanding English? Malcolm's jaw tightened. Only slightly. He had spent years learning that dignity was sometimes mistaken for weakness by people who understood only submission and force. He had also learned that anger, however justified, could become a gift to someone waiting for an excuse. So he gave Mercer nothing. He lowered himself onto the gravel. Heat came through his pants immediately. Small stones pressed into his palms when he steadied himself. Across the road, the man at the gas pump was still watching. A woman behind Parker's corner's window raised one hand toward her mouth. Nobody moved. Mercer stood over Malcolm with the evidence pouch dangling from 2 fingers. $2,300. Malcolm looked at it. Something old and painful moved behind his eyes, but his voice remained controlled. Make sure you write down the exact amount. Mercer frowned. What? $2,300. Make sure that's the amount on the receipt. You worried I can't count? I want the record to be accurate. The record. Mercer repeated the word with amusement. You hear this guy, Bennett? Cody didn't answer. Mercer looked over. Bennett. Yes, Sergeant. You hear him? I heard him. Mercer shook his head. Everybody thinks they're a lawyer once they see an evidence bag. Malcolm said nothing. A tractor trailer thundered past. Wind pushed Grit across the shoulder. Then Mercer ordered him to stand again. Malcolm rose carefully. As he brushed dust from his jacket, something slipped from an inside pocket. It hit the gravel with a faint metallic click. Cody saw it. A brass coin, old enough that the edges had been worn smooth. On its face was a small set of scales. Around the scales were 2 words, public integrity. Cody's eyes remained on it for half a second too long. Malcolm saw him looking. Mercer was busy returning paperwork to his cruiser. Malcolm bent slightly, but Mercer turned back before he could reach the coin. Leave it. Malcolm straightened. Mercer shoved a seizure receipt toward him. You can file whatever claim you think you're entitled to file. Malcolm took the paper. His eyes moved over the amount. $2,300, then the stated reason. Suspected proceeds associated with unlawful activity. He folded the receipt once, carefully. Mercer waited for an argument. None came. You're free to go. Malcolm looked at him. Am I being charged with a crime? No. Am I under arrest? No. Then you've taken $2,300 from a man you're allowing to drive away because you have no crime to charge him with. Mercer's expression hardened. You want to make this stop longer? No. Malcolm opened the driver's door. Mercer gave the roof 2 patronizing taps. Then drive. Malcolm got inside. Cody remained near the shoulder. The brass coin was still in the dust beside his boot. Malcolm started the Honda. For the first time, Cody looked directly at him. There was a question in the younger deputy's face. Malcolm gave him no answer. He pulled onto the highway and disappeared south through the waves of heat. Mercer was already walking toward the cruiser. "Come on, Bennett." Cody crouched as though tying his boot. His fingers closed around the brass coin. It felt unexpectedly heavy. "Bennett." "Coming." He slipped it into his palm before Mercer could see. The scales and the words "public integrity" disappeared inside his fist. Mercer climbed into the cruiser, satisfied with another seizure. Cody got into the passenger seat. He waited until Mercer was looking toward traffic. Then he opened his hand beneath the dashboard and studied the coin again. The front told him almost nothing, but along the worn edge he could see that something had been engraved on the reverse. Initials. A number. Cody's thumb moved toward them, and for the first time that afternoon, he wondered whether the quiet black man sitting in the gravel had been the only person on that highway who knew exactly what was happening. 3 weeks earlier, rain had been falling over Richmond since late afternoon. Not a violent summer storm, just a steady gray rain that polished the sidewalks, darkened brick walls, and made headlights smear across wet pavement like streaks of yellow paint. Inside Open Table Community Kitchen, the air smelled of vegetable soup, coffee, and fresh bread. Reverend Arthur Lewis stood near the loading door with his sleeves rolled above his elbows. At 69, Arthur moved more slowly than he once had, but he still refused to stand aside when deliveries arrived. He had spent most of the evening carrying canned vegetables from a dented cargo van into the pantry while volunteers prepared dinner in the kitchen. "Arthur, you're going to hurt your back." The voice came from behind him. Arthur turned. Malcolm Reed was walking through the rain carrying 2 cardboard boxes stacked against his chest. Same faded brown jacket, same work boots, same quiet expression. To Arthur, he was simply Malcolm from Richmond. "You hear me complaining?" Arthur asked. "Not yet." "Then don't ruin a good evening." Malcolm smiled and carried the boxes inside. Open Table occupied the ground floor of an old brick building near a Route 15 bus stop. The dining room was simple: folding tables, mismatched chairs, scuffed tile, fluorescent lights over the serving line. But someone had placed small lamps along the windows, and their warm yellow glow softened everything after dark. Nobody was asked why they came. Some people needed dinner, some needed company, some came to help. Malcolm usually did all three without admitting to any of them. He had just stacked the last cans when he noticed Arthur sitting alone at a small desk near the pantry. A battered black notebook lay open beneath the desk lamp. Arthur was staring at one page. Malcolm reached for another box. "You need that moved?" Arthur didn't answer. "Arthur." Arthur slowly removed his glasses. "You ever have the feeling somebody keeps telling you the same story, only the name changes?" Malcolm stopped. "What kind of story?" Arthur tapped the notebook. "Highway seizures." Something in Malcolm's face became still. Arthur didn't notice. He turned the notebook around. There were names written in blue ink. Dates, dollar amounts, traffic stop locations. Some pages contained copies of receipt numbers taped beside handwritten notes. At the top of one page, Arthur had written a single figure and circled it twice: $189,000. Malcolm sat down. "What's that?" "Amount the sheriff's department says its highway unit seized over the last 18 months. "From drug arrests?" Arthur gave him a tired look. "That's what I thought." He turned several pages. Then people started coming through that door. Arthur placed one finger beside the first name. Helen Brooks. 64, lives over on the east side. Her husband passed away years ago. She finally sold his old pickup because keeping it running cost more than she could afford. Malcolm looked at the amount. $30,600. She got paid cash, Arthur continued, had a signed bill of sale. Got stopped in Ashford County on her way back from meeting the buyer. What was she charged with? Nothing. Malcolm looked up. Arthur shook his head. They took every dollar. Rain ticked against the window. Arthur moved to the next name. Leon Harris, 58, Army veteran, maintenance supervisor at an apartment complex. Furnace went out at his place. He found a used replacement from a contractor who wanted cash. $2,100. Same county? Same highway. Charge? None. Arthur turned another page. Denise Walker, 39, restaurant cook, $1,050. She'd been saving tips, Arthur said. Her adult sister was behind on rent. Denise was driving the money over when she got stopped. Malcolm read the notation beside her name. Vehicle searched after consent refused. He read it again. Who stopped her? Arthur pointed. Sergeant Dale Mercer. Malcolm turned backward through the notebook. Mercer. Another page. Mercer. Then again. Dale Mercer. The same name appeared with disturbing regularity. What happened when they challenged the seizures? Arthur leaned back. Helen filed paperwork. Leon called the sheriff's office until they stopped returning his calls. Denise couldn't afford a lawyer. Most of them eventually gave up. You contacted the county? Arthur laughed once, but there was no humor in it. He opened a drawer and removed a thick folder. Inside were copies of letters. Sheriff Thomas Whitaker, Ashford County officials, state offices, oversight contacts. Arthur had kept everything. I mailed the first packet 14 months ago. He handed Malcolm a response. 3 lines. Complaint received. Matter reviewed. No further action required. Malcolm's eyes remained on the page. Who reviewed it? Doesn't say. Did anyone interview Helen? No. Leon? No. Denise? Arthur shook his head. Malcolm picked up another response. Almost identical. Received, reviewed, closed. Arthur's voice softened. You know what Helen asked me? Malcolm waited. She asked whether she should have dressed better before she drove through that county. Malcolm slowly lowered the letter. Arthur looked toward the dining room. Helen Brooks was there that evening. She sat near the window in a raincoat that had been carefully folded over the back of her chair. She was helping another adult guest open a stubborn packet of crackers. Nothing about her looked dangerous. Nothing about her looked suspicious. She looked tired. That was all. Arthur continued. She spent 2 weeks wondering what she'd done wrong. Malcolm's jaw tightened. She didn't do anything wrong. I know that. Does she? Arthur didn't answer. Across the room, Helen laughed softly at something someone said. The sound made the silence at Arthur's desk heavier. Malcolm closed the folder. How many people? In this notebook? 26. And how many were charged? 3 that I know of, none convicted. Malcolm looked again at the circled figure. $189,000. It was large enough to sound impressive at a county budget meeting. Large enough to buy equipment. Large enough to make a newspaper headline. But written beside 26 names, it looked different. It looked like rent, repairs, savings, years of overtime, help for family, money that belonged to people who had been forced to prove they deserved to keep what was already theirs. Malcolm turned another page. There was Mercer again. Arthur watched him. Sure, you're awfully interested for a man who says he works in compliance. Malcolm looked up. A faint smile touched his face. Compliance covers a lot. That so? So I've been told. Arthur studied him, then let the question go. That was one of the things Malcolm liked about him. Arthur knew when someone needed conversation. He also knew when someone needed silence. A bus hissed to a stop outside. The doors folded open. 2 adult passengers hurried beneath umbrellas toward the kitchen entrance. Malcolm stood. Keep the notebook somewhere safe. Arthur's eyebrows rose. I've kept it safe for 3 years. Keep the originals. Don't give them to anyone. Arthur stared at him now. There was something different in Malcolm's voice, not fear, authority. Malcolm. Yes? What aren't you telling me? Malcolm looked down at the notebook. 26 names. 26 stories that had reached people with titles and desks and authority, and somehow ended up back here. He thought about Helen blaming her clothes, about Leon losing the money for his furnace, about Denise working restaurant shifts to help her sister and watching those savings disappear into an evidence pouch. Then he looked at Arthur. I'm telling you, I believe them. Arthur's expression changed. For a man who had spent 3 years receiving official letters saying almost nothing, those 4 words landed harder than Malcolm expected. Arthur nodded once. That's more than we've gotten so far. Malcolm helped serve dinner before he left. He carried soup to Helen's table when her hands were full. She thanked him without knowing who he was. He washed 3 trays, took out 2 bags of trash, then stepped into the Richmond rain. The Route 15 bus pulled away behind him with a low diesel growl. Malcolm walked beneath a flickering streetlight and stopped under the narrow awning of a closed market. He took out his phone. For several seconds, he simply held it. Then he dialed. The call connected after 2 rings. A woman's voice answered. Crawford. Malcolm watched rainwater stream along the curb. I found the pattern. Silence on the other end. How strong? Stronger than the numbers suggested. Same officer? Mostly. Name? Malcolm looked through the wet window of open table. Arthur was back at his desk. The notebook lay beneath the yellow lamp. Sergeant Dale Mercer. The woman's voice became sharper. You're certain? I've seen 26 complainants documented locally. Cash seizures, almost no charges, repeated searches after consent was refused. The sheriff's office was notified more than once. Another pause. Then the woman asked, Does Lewis know why you're there? No. Keep it that way. Malcolm's eyes stayed on Arthur. For now. All right. The voice on the phone changed from conversation to command. Senior Investigator Reed, come to my office first thing tomorrow morning. Bring everything you can document without compromising Lewis or the complainants. Malcolm said nothing for a moment. Across the street, reflected neon trembled in a puddle. Senior Investigator Reed. The words belonged to a world nobody inside Open Table knew Malcolm inhabited. Understood, Captain. He ended the call. Behind the glass, Arthur looked up from the notebook and saw Malcolm standing beneath the awning. Arthur raised one hand. Malcolm raised his in return. Then he slipped the phone into his faded jacket and walked into the rain. Arthur watched him disappear toward the bus stop, still believing he was Malcolm from Richmond. He had no way of knowing that the man who had just carried canned goods into his pantry was about to carry 26 ignored names into an investigation powerful enough to make Ashford County finally answer for them. The Route 15 bus arrived 8 minutes later. Malcolm climbed aboard with rain darkening the shoulders of his jacket and took a seat halfway back. The windows were fogged at the edges. Water ticked against the glass. A tired office worker in a navy coat slept 2 rows ahead with a grocery bag between his shoes. Malcolm watched Richmond slide past in wet reflections. Pawn shops, brick apartment buildings, a laundromat glowing white against the dark, a corner market with a flickering open sign. The city looked different from a bus than it did through the windshield of an official vehicle. Slower, closer, honest. That was one reason Malcolm rode when he could. The other reason was harder to explain. Years earlier, before the gray had started appearing at his temples, Malcolm had believed that doing the right thing inside a system would eventually protect you from the system itself. He had learned otherwise. At 37, while working in another investigative agency, Malcolm uncovered evidence that a respected supervisor had been suppressing misconduct complaints to protect favored employees. The case should have been simple: documents, dates, signatures, a pattern anyone could see. Malcolm reported it. Within weeks, his promotion vanished. Then came the whispers. Difficult. Not a team player. Too rigid. Not management material. Nobody accused him of lying. That would have required confronting the evidence. Instead, they made him expensive to defend. He spent nearly a year fighting the retaliation through administrative appeals and legal review. Attorney bills ate through his savings. His mortgage fell behind. For 3 months, Malcolm kept every unopened bank envelope in a kitchen drawer because looking at the numbers would not change them. There had been mornings when he stood in the small front room of his Richmond row house and wondered whether telling the truth had cost him the only home he had ever owned. He kept the house. Barely. He lost the promotion. He also lost something less visible. The assumption that institutions became moral simply because moral people worked inside them. That wound never completely closed. Maybe that was why he kept helping people where no title was required. The bus dropped him 3 blocks from home. Rain had weakened to a mist. Malcolm walked beneath old maples toward a row of narrow brick houses with small porches and chain-link fences. His own place sat near the middle of the block. Modest, clean, a porch light burning beside a blue front door. Before he reached it, a voice called from across the street. "Malcolm!" He turned. His neighbor, Walter Green, 72, stood beneath the porch roof of the house opposite his. One arm was tucked close against his body. "You all right?" Malcolm asked. Walter waved him off. "Fine." That wasn't convincing. Walter sighed, shoulders acting up again. Malcolm crossed the street. Walter had injured it 2 months earlier at the Route 15 bus stop. He had caught his shoe on a broken edge of pavement and gone down hard beside the bench. Malcolm had been there. He had missed an appointment that evening because he stayed with Walter until the pain eased enough for him to stand, then rode with him to an urgent care clinic and waited until a doctor confirmed there was no fracture. Walter had tried to pay him back for the cab. Malcolm refused. Then Walter tried paying him for the groceries Malcolm carried upstairs the next day. Malcolm refused that too. Now Walter nodded toward the porch rail. "You know that board you fixed?" Malcolm looked. 2 weeks earlier, he had replaced a rotten section of railing and reinforced the steps after noticing Walter gripping the post every time he came outside. "What about it?" "Still standing." "That was the idea." Walter grinned. "I got $50, says you undercharged me." "You weren't charged anything." "Exactly my complaint." Malcolm inspected the railing. "Solid." "Keep your 50. Walter shook his head. "Sure, you can't keep doing things for people and never letting anybody do anything back." Malcolm looked toward his own house. "Sure I can." "No, you can't." A small smile crossed Malcolm's face. "Good night, Walter." "Coward." Malcolm laughed and crossed the street. Inside his house, everything was quiet. No television, no music, just the hum of the refrigerator and rainwater dripping from the gutters outside. He hung this faded jacket on a hook by the door. On a small shelf beneath it sat several unopened envelopes, a bowl for keys, and an old photograph of his parents taken many years earlier. Malcolm touched the edge of the frame as he passed. He heated leftover soup, ate standing at the kitchen counter, then opened his laptop. He did not enter Arthur's names into any official system. Not yet. He had promised himself that whatever happened next would not turn frightened people into case numbers before they understood what they were joining. Instead, Malcolm created a private timeline from memory. Helen Brooks, $30,600. Dale Mercer, Leon Harris, $2,100. Dale Mercer, Denise Walker, $1,150. Dale Mercer. One officer's name threaded through the complaints like a dark stitch. Malcolm leaned back. The clock above the stove read 10:43. His eyes were tired, but his mind would not slow down. He remembered Helen at Open Table helping someone with the cracker packet. Arthur saying she had wondered whether she should have dressed better. That detail stayed with him. Not because it was dramatic, because it was ordinary. People who had been humiliated long enough often began editing themselves instead of questioning the person who hurt them. Maybe different clothes, maybe a different route, maybe less cash, maybe more deference. Malcolm knew that habit. He had spent years learning not to carry blame that belonged to someone else. The next morning, he was up before 6. By 7, he had replaced the work jacket with a charcoal suit and clean white shirt. The difference was striking. Same man, different assumptions. He looked at himself in the hallway mirror. For a moment, he thought about how quickly strangers changed when they saw the suit. Doors opened. Voices softened. People used "sir." The thought did not make him proud. It made him tired. Before leaving, he removed a worn brass coin from a locked drawer. It fit easily in his palm. On one side were scales of justice surrounded by the words "public integrity." The edges had been rubbed smooth from years of handling. He turned it over. VBPS, MR, 017. Malcolm stared at the engraving for a moment, then returned the coin to the drawer. Not today. He took the city bus downtown. At 8:10, the Route 15 stopped beside a grocery store where an older man was struggling with 2 heavy shopping bags. Malcolm stepped off behind him. The man, 68 according to the transit discount card clipped to his coat, lost his grip on one bag. Cans rolled across the wet sidewalk. 3 commuters stepped around them. Malcolm crouched. "Don't worry, I got it. You'll miss your bus. There'll be another one." Together they gathered the cans. Malcolm carried both bags beneath the awning and waited until the man had his balance. "You don't have to stay," the man said. "I know." That answer came naturally. He heard versions of it all the time. You don't have to. That was the point. He waited for the next bus. At 8:51, Malcolm entered a state office building in downtown Richmond. Glass doors, security desk, marble lobby, people moving with coffee cups and ID badges. Nobody gave his suit a second look. On the 9th floor, he walked past a row of frosted conference room windows and stopped outside an office marked Captain Elaine Crawford, Virginia Bureau of Professional Standards. He knocked once. "Come in." Elaine Crawford was 55, sharp-eyed, composed, with a stack of files already open across her desk. She did not waste time with greetings. "You said you found a pattern." Malcolm sat opposite her. "I found people." Elaine studied him. "Difference. A pattern is numbers." He placed his notebook on the desk. "People remember what was said to them." Elaine leaned back. Malcolm continued. 26 complainants documented locally. Same corridor, same unit. Mercer appears repeatedly. Cash seizures with almost no convictions. Multiple drivers say their vehicles were searched after they refused consent. Elaine's expression tightened. "How much?" "The county publicly reports 189,000 over 18 months. And Lewis? Has been writing everyone who would listen." "Sheriff?" "Thomas Whitaker received complaints. Response? Received. Reviewed. No action." Elaine was quiet. Outside the window, Richmond moved 9 floors below them. Cars, buses, people walking beneath umbrellas. Finally, Elaine said, "You believe the complainants." Malcolm thought about Arthur's notebook, about Helen, Leon, Denise. "I do." Elaine closed one file. "Then we're past anomaly review." She pulled another folder from the stack. On its cover was printed, Ashford County Highway Interdiction Preliminary Assessment. Malcolm looked at it. Elaine placed her hand over the folder. "If we move forward, we do this carefully. No grandstanding, no assumptions. We prove what happened." Malcolm nodded. "That works for me." Elaine watched him for another second. You already have something in mind." It wasn't a question. Malcolm looked through the glass wall toward the city. A man who had spent years being underestimated had learned to recognize when assumptions became evidence. He turned back to Elaine. "I want to drive Mercer's highway." Elaine's expression changed. Not surprise, concern. "You mean observe?" "No." Malcolm's voice remained quiet. "I mean give him a chance to decide who he thinks I am." Elaine stared at him, and somewhere between Arthur's battered notebook and the state file sitting on her desk, the investigation stopped being about old complaints. It became about what Sergeant Dale Mercer would do when the next black man on his highway looked ordinary enough to believe nobody powerful was watching. Captain Elaine Crawford did not answer Malcolm immediately. She stood and walked to the window. 9 floors below, traffic moved through downtown Richmond in patient lines. Buses eased into stops. Delivery trucks crowded curbs. Pedestrians crossed beneath umbrellas even though the rain had finally begun to break. Elaine folded her arms. "You understand what you're proposing?" "Yes." "You want to enter a pattern we believe includes unlawful searches and cash seizures?" "Yes." "With no visible credentials?" "Yes." "No government vehicle?" "Yes." "No announcement to Ashford County?" Malcolm nodded. Elaine turned from the window. "And if Mercer decides to escalate beyond a seizure?" "Then the support team intervenes." That answer sounds cleaner in this office than it will on a highway. Malcolm knew that. So did she. Elaine had spent 30 years around investigations. She understood the difference between controlled conditions and real human behavior. Plans were organized. People were not. She returned to the desk and opened the Ashford County file. Inside were maps, seizure summaries, complaint references, and preliminary traffic stop data. A yellow marker line followed a section of state highway just outside Ashford County's commercial strip. Mercer's corridor. "You've driven it before?" Elaine asked. "Twice." "In an official vehicle?" "Once." "And?" "Nothing." Elaine gave him a flat look. "Of course nothing." "That is the problem." She knew what he meant. A polished state sedan with government plates did not reveal how an officer treated ordinary people. A man in a suit carrying credentials did not reveal it either. Respect offered only after status became visible was not evidence of respect. It was evidence of calculation. Elaine sat down again. "Walk me through it." Malcolm leaned forward. "Gray Honda Accord. Older model. Mechanically sound. No agency registration. I drive the corridor alone. Plain clothes. Ordinary license." "Cash?" $2,300. Elaine's eyebrows lifted. "Specific. Enough to trigger interest without creating a story that feels artificial." "Source?" "Bank withdrawal made that morning. Photographed before departure. Serial numbers documented." "Reason for carrying it?" "Private purchase." "What are you buying?" "Doesn't matter unless he asks." "It matters if this ends up in court." Malcolm considered that. "Used dining room set from a private seller in Richmond." Elaine nodded. "Better." She made a note. "No drugs, no weapon, nothing ambiguous." "Agreed. Recorder?" "Body wire and vehicle audio." "Remote monitoring?" 2 units within response distance." "No closer than necessary." Elaine looked at him. "You really want him to believe you're alone?" "I want him to believe whatever he usually believes." That sentence sat between them. Elaine stopped writing. "Malcolm," he waited. "This is not about proving you're right." "I know. It's not about getting even with anyone who reminded you of what happened before." His expression hardened, but only slightly. "I know that too." Elaine studied him for a long moment. She was one of the few people in the bureau who knew what had happened years earlier. The lost promotion, the legal fight, the mortgage notices, the quiet campaign to make Malcolm look difficult because he had exposed what others wanted buried. She had seen the records. She had also seen what it cost him. "You have a habit," she said, "of standing inside bad systems long enough to make them reveal themselves." Malcolm gave a small smile. Occupational flaw. Dangerous one. Sometimes. Elaine closed the file. I'm approving the field operation. Malcolm did not celebrate. He simply nodded. Elaine raised one finger. With conditions. Of course. You do not reveal your bureau credentials unless safety requires it or the operation collapses. Agreed. You do not provoke Mercer. Agreed. You do not manufacture grounds for a stop. Agreed. If he stops you, it has to be his decision. It will be. Elaine pulled a second folder from a locked drawer. This one was thinner. Inside were the operational materials, a plain driver's license, vehicle paperwork, a bank withdrawal plan, emergency contact codes, and at the bottom, wrapped in dark cloth, a worn brass challenge coin. Elaine placed it on the desk. Malcolm's eyes settled on it. The scales of justice caught the office light. Public integrity, he reached for it. Elaine stopped him with one hand. So, you carry this only because field protocol requires a physical identifier if communications fail. I know. You do not show it. I know. You do not use it to end an uncomfortable stop. Malcolm met her eyes. I won't. Elaine released the coin. He picked it up. Heavy, familiar. On the reverse were the marks he had seen the night before. VBPS, MR, 017, his identification in brass. A small object powerful enough to change the way certain people spoke to him. That was precisely why he disliked carrying it. Malcolm slid the coin back into the cloth. Elaine noticed. You hate that thing. I hate what happens when people see it. What happens? They start treating me like they should have treated me before they saw it. Elaine said nothing. There was no answer to that. By noon, the operation had begun taking shape. Rachel Foster, 42, handled communications and evidence documentation. Daniel Carter, 48, mapped response routes from the Ashford County line. No one contacted the sheriff's department. No one contacted Mercer. No one contacted Sheriff Thomas Whitaker. The operation remained inside a small circle because if the pattern was real, Malcolm wanted to see it unfiltered. At 2:15, Rachel spread photographs across a conference table. Helen Brooks, Lyon Harris, Denise Walker. Each adult complainant had authorized preliminary contact through Arthur's records. No interviews had begun yet. For now, the Bureau had only their complaint summaries and the county's own seizure paperwork. Rachel tapped Denise's case. She refused consent. Malcolm nodded. That's what Arthur recorded. And the search happened anyway. Yes. Daniel looked toward the map. If Mercer follows the same sequence, we need clean audio on the consent refusal. Rachel added, and the amount needs to stay untouched until he finds it. Malcolm looked at the white evidence envelope on the table. $2,300 would go inside. Photographed, documented, counted twice. To anyone else, it would look like cash. To the Bureau, it would be a measuring instrument. That idea bothered Malcolm more than he expected. Money had already become too many things in this case. Helen's truck, Lyon's furnace, Denise's help for her sister, rent, work, savings, now evidence. Elaine entered the room carrying coffee. Last chance to reconsider. Daniel smiled faintly. You asking him or us? Him. Malcolm looked at the map. No. Elaine handed him a cup. Then we do it right. Over the next 2 days, every detail was tested. Recorder placement, signal loss, emergency code words, vehicle cameras, response times. The Honda was checked mechanically and cleared. The cash was withdrawn from a Richmond bank on Tuesday morning. Malcolm stood at the teller window wearing the faded brown jacket again. The teller counted the bills, 2,300s. He placed them inside a white envelope with the withdrawal slip. Outside, Rachel photographed the money on the hood of an unmarked car. Every serial number was recorded. Daniel sealed the documentation packet. Ready? Malcolm looked toward the gray Accord. It sat beneath a pale summer sky, ordinary enough to disappear in any parking lot. That was the point. Elaine approached from behind. She held out the brass coin. Malcolm looked at it. "You sure?" "Protocol." He took it. For a moment the coin rested in his palm. Public integrity, a promise engraved into metal. Then he slipped it into the inside pocket of his faded jacket. Elaine's voice was low. "If Mercer is what these people say he is, he'll show you exactly who he is." Malcolm opened the Honda's door. "And if he isn't?" Elaine looked toward the highway beyond the parking garage. "Then maybe 26 people get some good news for once." Malcolm got behind the wheel. The recorder was already running. He placed the white envelope in the center console, closed it, started the engine. Jazz came softly through the old speakers. Nothing dramatic, nothing suspicious. Just a 46-year-old black man in a used Honda carrying cash and driving through Virginia. Rachel's voice came through the concealed earpiece. "Unit 1 receiving." Daniel followed. "Unit 2 receiving." Elaine came last. "Reed, you are clear to proceed." Malcolm pulled into traffic. Richmond slowly fell behind him. Office buildings gave way to strip malls. Strip malls gave way to trees and open fields. The farther he drove, the quieter the road became. By early afternoon, a green highway sign appeared ahead. Ashford County. Malcolm's hands settled comfortably on the wheel. The white envelope remained unseen inside the console. The brass coin rested against his chest, beneath the jacket. And several miles ahead, Sergeant Dale Mercer was sitting beside the highway waiting for a car that looked worth stopping. Mercer liked the northbound median just past mile marker 47. The road widened there before narrowing again near Parker's Corner Market, and the long straightaway gave him an unobstructed view of traffic coming over the low-rise. He had used the same patch of gravel for years. Same cruiser, same angle, same routine. The county called it interdiction. Mercer called it knowing what to look for. At 51, he had spent 23 years wearing the Ashford County badge. 7 of those years had been with the Highway Interdiction Unit, where seizure numbers mattered almost as much as arrests, sometimes more. The sheriff's office never said that publicly. Sheriff Thomas Whitaker certainly never said it during county meetings. He talked about public safety, narcotics corridors, keeping criminal money out of Virginia communities. Then the budget sheets came out. Forfeiture revenue had helped pay for new cruisers, tactical equipment, training trips, overtime, even repairs to the aging station roof. Mercer understood the message. Bring in money, the department noticed. Bring in more money, the sheriff remembered your name. A framed newspaper clipping hung near the briefing room. Ashford County Unit leads region in highway seizures. Mercer stood beside Whitaker in the photograph, smiling beneath fluorescent lights with one hand on a table covered in evidence bags. No drugs were visible, no weapons, mostly cash. Nobody had asked why. Deputy Cody Bennett sat beside Mercer in the cruiser now, flipping through the afternoon traffic log. At 28, Cody had been assigned to the unit 8 months earlier. He had arrived eager, pressed uniform, fresh notebook. The kind of deputy who still wrote down everything a supervisor told him. Mercer had liked that at first. Lately, Cody asked too many questions. Mercer lowered the radar gun. "You see that white Altima?" Cody looked up. "Yeah. Out-of-state plate. Maryland. Driver?" Cody watched it pass. White male, maybe 50s. Mercer set the radar gun down. Not worth it. Cody's eyes shifted toward him. He was doing 75. So? Speed limit 70. Mercer gave him a look. "You want to write speeding tickets all afternoon. Transfer to patrol." Cody said nothing. A minute later, a black SUV approached in the left lane. Mercer straightened. "See that?" Cody looked. "BMW?" "Exactly. What about it?" Mercer smiled. "Expensive car, out-of-county tag, black driver." Cody's jaw tightened. Mercer continued as though teaching a classroom lesson. That's what I call a profitable combination. The BMW passed at 70. Mercer did not pull out. Too much traffic behind it. He waited. Cody looked through the windshield. You always pick cars like that? Mercer turned slowly. Cars like what? You know what I mean. No, say it. Cody hesitated. Mercer enjoyed the hesitation. Finally, Cody said, drivers you think might be carrying cash. That's the job. That's not what I asked. Mercer leaned back. The air conditioner blew against the sweat beneath his collar. You want to survive in this unit, Bennett? Yes. Then stop treating every stop like a law school exam. Cody looked away. Mercer picked up his coffee. The highway tells you what it is. People coming through with too much money, too many stories, too much attitude. You learn patterns. What patterns? Mercer smiled again. Out-of-town plates, nervous hands, cars that don't match the driver. Cody looked back at him. What does that mean? You know exactly what it means. No, I want you to say it. For the first time, irritation crossed Mercer's face. He took a slow drink. You see a guy driving something he obviously can't afford. You ask questions. You see somebody in a beat-up car carrying a fat envelope. You ask questions. Either direction, something doesn't add up. And if it does add up, then they drive away. Cody thought about that. How many people whose money we seized last month were actually charged? Mercer's eyes hardened. You keeping score? I saw the reports. Reports aren't your concern. I'm on the unit. You're on my unit. The words came out flat, possessive. Cody lowered his eyes to the logbook. Mercer leaned toward him. Listen carefully. Sheriff Whitaker signs the seizure paperwork. County council reviews it. Money goes through evidence. Everybody above your pay grade knows how this works. Cody said nothing. Mercer's voice softened. That made it worse. You want a future in this department, learn who gets believed. The cruiser filled with silence. Outside, cicadas buzzed in the weeds. A freight truck groaned past. Cody looked toward Parker's corner in the distance. The market's red sign shimmered above the road. He had heard Mercer say things like this before. Not quite this directly, but enough. During Cody's second month, Mercer had stopped a black warehouse supervisor driving home from a job site with $1,800 in cash. The man had explained that his landlord required a money order, and he was headed to a grocery store to buy one. Mercer took the cash anyway. No arrest, no drugs, no weapon. Cody remembered the man standing beside his car holding the seizure receipt, as if somebody had handed him instructions for losing. Another stop involved a black woman returning from an estate sale. $900. Another involved an older black contractor with $2,600 tucked inside a bank envelope. Each time Mercer used the same words. Suspicious circumstances, possible proceeds, subject unable to provide satisfactory explanation. Cody had begun noticing something else. White drivers carrying cash somehow always had satisfactory explanations. A hunting trip, a used motorcycle, casino winnings, a family purchase. Mercer might joke. He might warn them not to carry so much. Then he sent them on their way. Cody had never written any of that down. That fact bothered him most. He knew enough to notice, not enough to speak. Or maybe he had been afraid to find out what speaking would cost him. Mercer suddenly lifted the radar gun. Here we go. Cody looked up. A dark sedan approached from the north. Black driver, Virginia plate from outside Ashford County. 72. Mercer watched it pass. He waited. Why not that one? Cody asked. 2 people inside. So? Passenger complicates things. Cody stared at him. Mercer glanced over. What? Nothing. Good. Another 10 minutes passed. Then Mercer's phone buzzed. Sheriff Whitaker. Mercer answered on speaker. Yes, Sheriff. You still out by 47? Yes, sir. Numbers are light this month. Cody looked toward Mercer. Whitaker continued. County Finance is asking what we expect from interdiction before quarter close. Mercer smiled. We'll bring it up. That's what I wanted to hear. The call ended. Mercer set the phone down. Cody's face had gone still. Numbers, he said. Mercer shrugged. Everything has numbers. Arrests. Revenue. Cody looked out the window. Something inside him shifted. Mercer did not notice. He was already watching the next group of cars crest the rise. A pickup, a minivan, a delivery van, then, farther back, an aging gray Honda Accord. One driver, male, black. Mercer lowered the coffee. The Honda was ordinary enough to disappear in traffic. No luxury wheels, no bumper stickers, no visible reason to remember it. That made Mercer curious. He raised the radar gun. 70, then 71, 1 mile over. Cody saw the reading. 71. Mercer reached for the ignition. You serious? What? 1 mile? Mercer's hand moved to the gear shift. Probable cause starts somewhere. The gray Honda came closer. Through the windshield, Mercer saw the driver. Middle-aged black man, plain jacket, alone, calm posture. Out-of-county address would be likely. Mercer smiled. Profitable combination. Cody felt something cold move through his stomach. Several miles behind them, Malcolm Reed drove with jazz playing softly through the Honda's worn speakers. His hands were relaxed at 10 and 2. The white envelope remained hidden in the center console. $2,300, photographed, documented, waiting. Rachel Foster's voice came quietly through his concealed earpiece. Unit 1 still receiving. Daniel Carter followed. Unit 2 has visual at distance. Malcolm did not respond. There was nothing to say yet. Ahead, he saw the county cruiser in the median. He passed it without turning his head. Mercer watched the Honda go by, then pulled onto the highway. The cruiser accelerated. Cody looked at the speed display once more. 71. He looked at Mercer. Mercer was already reaching for the emergency lights. Blue light exploded across the windshield. Malcolm saw it in his rearview mirror. His expression did not change. He activated his turn signal, slowed gradually, pulled onto the shoulder, clean, controlled. The Honda stopped in a cloud of pale roadside dust. Malcolm placed both hands on the steering wheel. The brass coin pressed lightly against his chest. Behind him, Mercer let the cruiser idle for several seconds before opening his door. Cody remained seated for one extra heartbeat. He did not know Malcolm Reed. He had never seen the brass coin. He had never heard of VBPS, MR. 7. All he knew was that Mercer had just selected another black driver because he believed the man looked profitable. And as Mercer stepped into the Virginia heat and started toward the gray Honda, Cody felt the familiar knot of dread return. Only this time, something about the driver waiting calmly with both hands visible made him wonder whether the pattern was finally about to meet someone who had come prepared to remember every detail. Mercer approached slowly. Not because there was danger, because he liked making people wait. The sun sat high and white over the highway, bleaching color from the grass along the shoulder. Heat shimmered above the pavement. Trucks hammered past in bursts of wind and diesel, rocking the Honda slightly each time they went by. Malcolm kept both hands on the steering wheel. The hidden recorder beneath his shirt was already running. His breathing stayed even. Rachel's voice came faintly through the concealed earpiece. Audio is clean, Daniel followed. Support units holding position. Malcolm gave no sign that he had heard them. Mercer reached the driver's window. He looked inside. Old dashboard, plain clothes, no expensive watch, no visible badge, no reason, in Mercer's mind, to show respect. License and registration, Malcolm reached slowly. Good afternoon, Sergeant. Mercer did not return the greeting. License, registration. Malcolm handed them over. Mercer glanced at the name. Malcolm Reed. Yes. Richmond. Yes. What brings you down here? Driving through. Where to? Richmond. Mercer looked up. You're already from Richmond. I was outside the county on business. What kind of business? Compliance. Mercer's mouth curled slightly. Compliance. Malcolm nodded. That right? Yes. Mercer looked at the faded jacket, the work boots, the aging Honda, then back at Malcolm. What kind of compliance work you doing dressed like that? Malcolm's expression did not change. The kind that doesn't require a suit. Mercer stared at him. Cody had stepped out of the cruiser now and stood several yards back, watching. He had seen this stage before. The questions that sounded casual, then personal, then accusatory. Mercer glanced at Malcolm's license again. You know why I stopped you? No. 71 and a 70. Malcolm paused. 1 mile over. That's still over. I understand. Mercer waited for irritation. None came. He seemed almost disappointed. You nervous? No. Most people are when they see blue lights. I noticed the lights. I'm not nervous. Mercer leaned one forearm on the roof. You mind if I ask whether there's anything illegal in the vehicle? No. No, you don't mind? No, there is nothing illegal in the vehicle. Mercer's eyes narrowed. Any drugs? No. Weapons? No. Large amounts of cash? Malcolm looked at him. The question came too quickly, too specifically. Why are you asking? Mercer smiled. Routine. Malcolm knew it was not. So did Cody. Mercer gestured toward the interior. Step out. Malcolm kept his hands visible. Am I being detained for anything beyond the speeding citation? You're being detained because I told you to step out. Malcolm opened the door. Slowly. He stood on the shoulder. The heat hit immediately. Mercer took one step back. Face the car. Malcolm did. Cody came closer. Mercer nodded at him. Pat him down. Cody hesitated. 1 beat. 2. Malcolm noticed. Mercer noticed too. You waiting for written instructions? No, Sergeant. Cody stepped forward. I'm going to pat you down for weapons. Malcolm's voice remained calm. I have none. Cody searched carefully. Waist, jacket, pockets, nothing. No weapon, no contraband, no bulge of anything suspicious. Only a wallet, keys, a folded receipt, and the worn brass coin tucked farther inside the jacket where Cody's hand did not reach. Cody stepped back. Clear. Mercer looked annoyed by the result. He turned toward the Honda. Pop the trunk. Malcolm looked at him. I do not consent to a search. Mercer stopped. The highway noise seemed to fall away for a moment. What? I do not consent to a search of my vehicle. Cody looked at Mercer. Malcolm continued. I have provided identification. I have no weapons. You have not told me I am under arrest. I do not consent to any search. Mercer walked closer. You been watching lawyer videos online? No. You work in compliance and suddenly you're an expert? I know what I'm consenting to. That answer hardened something in Mercer. He pointed toward the passenger side. Bennett, search the car. Cody did not move. Sergeant. Mercer turned his head. What? Cody swallowed. He refused consent. Mercer's eyes became flat. I heard him. Then what's our probable cause? For the first time, Malcolm saw fear in Cody's face. Not fear of him. Fear of Mercer. Mercer stepped toward his deputy. His behavior. He's standing still. His answers. He answered everything. Mercer lowered his voice. You questioning me in front of a subject? Cody's jaw tightened. No. Then do your job. Malcolm watched the exchange. There it was. The thing Arthur's notebook could never fully show. Not just one man abusing power, another man seeing it, knowing it, and deciding whether silence was safer. Cody looked at Malcolm. Malcolm gave him no rescue, no signal, no hint. He could not. Not yet. Cody turned toward the Honda. Malcolm spoke clearly, enough for both body cameras and the hidden recorder to catch every word. For the record, I do not consent to this search. Mercer smiled. For the record, I don't need your permission. Cody opened the passenger door. The interior smelled faintly of old fabric and summer heat. He checked beneath the seat. Nothing. The glove compartment, registration papers, insurance documents, a flashlight. No drugs, no weapon. Mercer stood behind him. Keep going. Cody opened the rear door. A folded blanket, reusable grocery bags, a small toolbox. Nothing. Mercer's patience thinned. Center console. Malcolm felt his pulse change for the first time. Not fear. Recognition. They were moving exactly where the operation predicted. Rachel's voice whispered in his ear. Stay steady. Cody leaned through the passenger side. His hand moved toward the console latch. He stopped. The same hesitation again. Malcolm saw it. Mercer did too. Open it. Cody looked back. Sergeant, we've got nothing. Mercer's voice sharpened. Open the console. Cody did. The lid rose. Inside sat the plain white envelope, untouched, exactly where Malcolm had placed it that morning. Cody stared at it. For a moment, nobody moved. Mercer's expression changed immediately. The irritation disappeared. Something almost pleased replaced it. There we go. Cody took out the envelope. It had weight. Mercer extended his hand. Give it here. Cody did not. Not right away. Malcolm noticed the younger deputy's fingers tighten around the paper. Mercer repeated himself. Bennett. Cody handed it over. Mercer opened the flap. He saw the bills. $2,300. His smile returned. Slow. Satisfied. The same kind of smile Helen Brooks had described. The same kind Leon Harris remembered. The same kind Denise Walker said appeared just before her money disappeared into an evidence pouch. Malcolm stood beside his car in the heat and watched the pattern become a person. Mercer fanned the bills once, then twice. Well, Mr. Compliance. He looked at Malcolm over the top of the money. Looks like we finally found something worth talking about. Malcolm's face remained calm. But somewhere beneath that calm, Arthur's notebook opened again in his memory. 26 names, 26 stories. And now his own stop was becoming number 27. Mercer held the white envelope in one hand and counted the bills again with the other. 100. 2. 3. He took his time. The money snapped softly between his fingers while traffic hissed past on the highway. Heat pressed down on the shoulder, thick and dry, carrying the smell of hot asphalt, cut grass, and diesel. Malcolm stood beside the Honda with his hands visible. His face remained composed. Inside, something much colder had settled into place. This was not theory anymore, not numbers, not Arthur's handwriting, not a complaint packet returned with a stamped response. He was watching the mechanism work from 3 feet away. Mercer reached 23. 2,300. Malcolm nodded once. There's a withdrawal slip in the envelope. Mercer glanced inside. The bank receipt was exactly where Malcolm had said it would be. He did not remove it. Instead, he gave a short laugh. Drug runners carry receipts too. Cody looked at him. Malcolm did not. For one brief second, he was back at open table. Helen Brooks, 64, asking Arthur whether she should have dressed differently before driving through Ashford County. Leon Harris, 58, trying to explain that $2,100 was for a furnace. Denise Walker, 39, saying she had been taking $1,250 to help her adult sister with rent. Different amounts. Same disbelief. Same quiet theft dressed up as procedure. Malcolm felt the weight of those stories settle across his shoulders. He kept his voice level. "Read the withdrawal slip." Mercer looked at him. "What? You asked where the money came from. The document answers your question." "I heard you." "Then read it." Mercer's expression changed. Not because Malcolm had raised his voice. He had not. Because Malcolm had refused to behave like a man begging to be believed. Mercer folded the envelope in half and tapped it against his palm. "You don't get to direct this stop." Malcolm's eyes stayed on the money. "I'm not directing anything." "You sure sound like you are." "I'm asking you to examine evidence before you seize property." Cody's gaze dropped. The hidden recorder beneath Malcolm's shirt captured every word. Rachel's voice came through the earpiece, barely more than breath. "Clear audio." Malcolm gave no sign he heard. Mercer turned to Cody. "Evidence pouch." Cody remained still. "Bennett." Cody reached into the cruiser and pulled out a clear plastic bag. He walked back slowly. Malcolm watched him. There was sweat along Cody's hairline now, but it was not just the heat. Mercer held out the envelope. "Bag it." Cody took it. His fingers brushed the withdrawal slip. He could have pulled it out, could have read it, could have said something. Malcolm saw that possibility cross his face, then disappear. Cody placed the envelope and the $2,300 inside the clear pouch. The plastic crinkled. He sealed it. The sound was small, final. Malcolm looked at the pouch. For Helen, maybe it had sounded like that. For Lyon. For Denise. A little strip of plastic closing over something that took months or years to save. Mercer noticed Malcolm staring. "Problem?" "Yes." Mercer smiled. "Thought so. You are taking documented cash after a search I did not consent to, and you have not charged me with a crime. Civil seizure isn't an arrest." "I know." That answer bothered Mercer again. "You know a lot." "Enough." Mercer stepped closer. "How much you make doing this compliance work?" Malcolm did not answer. Mercer looked him over. Faded jacket, work boots, old Honda, then the evidence pouch. "Enough to carry $2,300 around?" Malcolm's jaw tightened. "You keep trying to make my appearance part of the evidence." Mercer gave him a flat look. "I didn't say anything about your appearance." "You didn't have to." Cody looked sharply at Malcolm. Mercer's face hardened. The highway seemed suddenly louder. A truck blasted past, kicking grit across the shoulder. Mercer waited until the noise faded. "You want to know what I see?" Malcolm said nothing. "I see a man who doesn't want his car searched. That is my right. I see cash. Cash is legal. I see attitude. I have not raised my voice once." That stopped Mercer for half a beat, because it was true. Malcolm had not cursed, had not threatened, had not resisted, had not given him anything that could be turned into aggression later. Mercer looked toward Cody. "Write the seizure receipt." Cody pulled out the pad. His hand shook slightly as he began. Malcolm watched. "Include the withdrawal slip." Mercer laughed. Cody stopped writing. Mercer said, "You worried about paperwork now?" "I'm worried about accuracy." "What? You planning to complain?" Malcolm met his eyes. "I'm planning to document what happened." A silence opened between them. Cody's pen hovered above the form. Mercer stared at Malcolm, then gave a slow smile. "Document whatever you want." He pointed at the evidence pouch. "Nobody's coming down here over $2,300. Malcolm felt the words land. Not because they frightened him, because Mercer believed them. This was not bluster. It was experience. 26 people had already proved him right. Mercer had watched complaints disappear, watched money stay gone, watched supervisors sign forms, watched witnesses stay quiet. He believed the system belonged to him because for years it had behaved as if it did. Cody looked at Mercer differently now. For the first time, the older man's confidence did not look like strength. It looked like evidence. Malcolm said quietly, "Make sure you write down the exact amount." Mercer rolled his eyes. 2,300. We can count. I want it on the receipt. Cody wrote it. $2,300. Malcolm watched every stroke of the pen. Mercer noticed. You always this particular? Yes. Must make you real popular. Malcolm's voice softened. I learned a long time ago that details matter most when someone thinks nobody will check them. Cody's eyes lifted. Mercer's did too. For a moment the air changed. Something in Malcolm's tone did not fit the man Mercer thought he had stopped. Not fear. Not desperation. Patience. The kind that came from somewhere Mercer could not identify. He pushed the thought away. Badge numbers, Malcolm said. Mercer blinked. What? I want both badge numbers on the receipt. You've got mine. I asked for both. Cody looked toward Mercer. Mercer said, Bennett's not the seizing officer. He participated in the search. You trying to make trouble for him? No. Malcolm turned his gaze to Cody. I'm making the record complete. Cody swallowed. Badge 2841. Mercer snapped his head toward him. Cody looked down. Malcolm nodded. Thank you. Mercer tore the receipt from the pad and held it against Malcolm's chest. Here. Malcolm took it. He read the amount. Then the stated justification. Suspected proceeds associated with unlawful activity. His eyes remained there for a moment. No crime named, no contraband found, no arrest made, just suspicion. Mercer turned toward the cruiser, then stopped. He looked back at Malcolm. Actually, we're not done. Malcolm folded the receipt once. What else? Mercer pointed toward the open shoulder between the Honda and Parker's corner. Move away from the car. Malcolm did. Farther. He walked several steps. Mercer pointed down. Sit. Malcolm looked at the ground. Gravel, no shade. The sun had baked the shoulder until heat seemed to rise from it in waves. Across the road, Parker's Corner Market stood in full view. A pickup was parked at one of the pumps. A few figures moved behind the glass. Cody looked at Mercer. Sergeant, he's cooperating. Mercer did not look at him. I said sit. Malcolm felt the silent pressure of the witnesses before he even saw their faces. This was not about officers or safety anymore. It was about position. One man standing, one man on the ground. A lesson for everyone watching. Malcolm lowered himself onto the burning gravel. Small stones pressed through the fabric at his knees. The heat came up through the road. Mercer stood above him with the clear pouch in his hand. And across Parker's corner, people began to stop what they were doing and stare. The market sat less than 100 yards from the shoulder, close enough to see faces, close enough to see who was standing and who had been forced to sit. Frank Miller, 72, had been pumping gas into an old Ford pickup when the stop turned ugly. He had worked as a mechanic for 43 years before retiring, and he had learned to recognize the difference between routine and humiliation. This was humiliation. Frank left the nozzle hanging in the tank and watched. Inside Parker's corner, Sarah Collins stood behind the counter beneath a red neon open sign. At 34, Sarah had spent 6 years managing afternoon shifts in a place where everybody noticed everything eventually. Road crews came in for coffee. Deputies came in for sandwiches. Travelers came in looking tired and left 10 minutes later with styrofoam cups and directions. She knew Mercer. Everybody did. She had seen him laughing at the counter with other deputies, seen Sheriff Whitaker shake his hand at county events, seen the newspaper clipping behind the register the year Mercer's unit led the region in seizures. Now Sarah watched through the wide front window as Malcolm sat in the gravel. Her hand rested on the counter. She wanted to walk outside. She did not. 2 adult customers near the door had gone silent. One slowly lowered his coffee. Another pretended to read the menu board even though his eyes kept returning to the highway. Nobody crossed the parking lot. Malcolm noticed all of it. Not individually, as one quiet wait. The silence of people who knew something was wrong but were calculating what it might cost to say so. He had seen that silence before. Conference rooms, internal hearings, hallways where co-workers suddenly became interested in their phones. The setting changed. The silence did not. Mercer looked toward Parker's corner and noticed the attention. Instead of becoming cautious, he seemed to enjoy it. "Feet out." Malcolm adjusted his legs. "Hands where I can see them." Malcolm placed both hands on his knees. Cody stood several feet away. "Sergeant, we already searched him." Mercer looked over. "Did I ask you?" "No." "Then stop narrating my stop." Malcolm looked at Cody. The younger deputy's discomfort had crossed into something more visible now. Shame. Mercer turned back to Malcolm. "Stand up." Malcolm rose carefully. The gravel had left pale dust across his knees. His palms were warm from the road. Mercer motioned him around. "Face the car again." Malcolm complied. Cody spoke under his breath. "He's cooperating." Mercer heard him. "What was that?" Cody took a breath. "I said he's cooperating." Mercer stepped closer. "And? Maybe we should verify the bank slip before we take the money." For the first time since the stop began, Cody had said something that sounded almost like resistance. Malcolm remained facing the Honda. He did not turn. Mercer's voice dropped. "Bennett." "Yes, Sergeant." "You want to run this stop?" "No." "You want my stripes?" "No." "Then what exactly do you want?" Cody looked at the evidence pouch. "I want the paperwork to hold up." That was safer than saying what he really meant. Malcolm knew it. Mercer knew it too. The difference was Mercer accepted the excuse because it let him remain in control. He raised the evidence pouch. "It holds up. The receipt is in the envelope. So, we could call the bank." Mercer laughed. Then he said the words Cody would remember for years. "I'm the verification." Cody went still. Across Parker's corner, Frank Miller heard only fragments carried by traffic and wind, but he saw Cody's face. That told him enough. Sarah saw it too through the glass. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. Still, nobody came outside. Mercer turned back to Malcolm. "Jacket?" Malcolm looked over his shoulder. "What about it?" "Take it off." "For what reason?" "Because I said so." Cody closed his eyes for half a second. Malcolm slowly unzipped the faded jacket. The brass coin rested in the inside pocket. He had almost forgotten the weight of it. Almost. He slipped one arm free, then the other. As he lowered the jacket, the pocket folded outward. The coin fell. It struck the gravel with a soft, metallic click. Not loud, but Cody heard it. Malcolm heard it too. Mercer did not. He had turned toward the cruiser to reach for another form. The coin landed near Malcolm's boot. Sunlight flashed across the worn brass. Cody looked down. Scales of justice. 2 words curved around the edge. Public integrity. His breathing changed. Malcolm saw his eyes. For a fraction of a second, neither man moved. Cody started to bend. Mercer turned back. Malcolm calmly shifted one foot. The sole of his boot covered the coin. Mercer looked between them. "What?" Cody straightened. "Nothing." Mercer shoved a second form into the folder on the cruiser hood. "Then stop standing around." Malcolm kept his foot exactly where it was. Cody stared at him. Something had changed. Until that moment, Cody had thought Malcolm was simply unusually calm. Educated, maybe. Legally aware. Stubborn enough to document everything. But that coin did not belong to a random driver. Not with those words. Not with that seal. Cody tried to remember where he had seen something like it before. Training? A bulletin? A state investigator who visited the academy? He could not place it. Mercer stepped toward Malcolm. You planning to spend all day out here? You stopped me. Mercer's mouth tightened. Cute. He handed Malcolm another copy of the seizure receipt. Malcolm looked at it. $2,300. Correct. He folded it and slipped it into his pants pocket. Am I free to leave? Mercer stared at him. Eventually. Am I being charged? No. Arrested? No. Then what are you still investigating? Mercer came closer. The kind of person who carries that much cash. Malcolm met his eyes. You've already decided what kind of person I am. The sentence was quiet. No accusation in the tone. That made it sharper. Mercer's jaw shifted. You're free to go. Malcolm picked up his jacket. The movement exposed the brass coin for half a second. Cody saw the reverse this time. Not clearly. Just enough to catch letters. VBPS. Then Malcolm's hand closed around the jacket, and the coin disappeared again into the folds. Except Malcolm did not put it back into the pocket. He had no chance. Mercer was watching him. So Malcolm let the coin remain near the edge of the gravel as though he had missed it. Cody understood. Maybe Malcolm meant him to see it. Maybe not. That uncertainty made his pulse quicken. Malcolm put on the jacket. He looked once toward Parker's corner. Frank Miller immediately looked away. Sarah did not. Their eyes met through the window. Malcolm gave no expression of anger, only recognition. He knew she had watched. Sarah knew he knew. That hurt more than if he had shouted at her. Malcolm opened the driver's door. Mercer gave the roof 2 flat taps. Drive safe. Malcolm paused. Badge 2841. Cody looked up. Malcolm had remembered. Then Malcolm got inside. The Honda started. Jazz returned softly through the speakers. He signaled, pulled back onto the highway, and drove south. Mercer watched him disappear. Guy thinks he's smarter than everybody. Cody did not answer. Mercer opened the cruiser door. Come on. Cody looked toward the gravel. The brass coin sat half hidden in dust near the edge of the shoulder. Mercer was already inside the cruiser. Cody bent down, picked it up. Warm metal pressed against his palm. He closed his fist before Mercer could turn around. At Parker's corner, Frank finally replaced the gas nozzle. Sarah remained behind the glass. Neither one knew yet that the thing they had just watched in silence was not going to disappear with the gray Honda. Cody climbed into the passenger seat. Mercer started the engine. The air conditioner roared. Mercer was already talking about getting lunch. Cody barely heard him. He kept his left hand below the dashboard. Slowly, carefully, he opened his fingers. The scales of justice stared up at him. Public integrity. He turned the coin over. Engraved into the worn brass were letters and numbers. VBPS, MR, low 17. Cody read them once, then again. His stomach dropped. He still did not know exactly what they meant. But for the first time in 8 months on Mercer's unit, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. The man they had just humiliated had not been as powerless as Mercer believed. Cody kept the brass coin hidden beneath his thigh as Mercer drove back toward the sheriff's office. The cruiser's air conditioner blew cold against the sweat on his neck, but Cody still felt overheated. His thoughts kept circling the same letters. VBPS MR Mercer drummed 2 fingers on the steering wheel. Parker's corner? Cody looked up. What? Lunch. I'm not hungry. Mercer glanced over. You sick? No. Then quit looking like somebody died. Cody turned toward the window. Fields rolled past in washed-out summer green. Telephone poles flicked by at steady intervals. Everything outside looked ordinary. That somehow made it worse. Mercer continued talking as if the afternoon had gone perfectly. 2300 on a 1-mile stop. He laughed. Not bad for 20 minutes. Cody said nothing. Guy practically handed it to us. He had a bank receipt. Mercer's smile disappeared. We already covered that. I know. Then why are you bringing it up? Cody looked down at his closed fist. Just thinking. That's your problem lately. Mercer took the turn toward Ashford County. You think too much. Cody's fingers tightened around the coin. Maybe Mercer was right. For 8 months, Cody had thought about every seizure after he went home. He thought about the older contractor whose hands shook when Mercer took $2,600. The woman who kept asking whether she could call her bank. The warehouse supervisor who stood beside his car long after they left, because as Cody understood later, he no longer had enough money to pay what he had driven out to pay. Cody thought. Mercer collected. That had been the arrangement. Until now. The Ashford County Sheriff's Office appeared at the end of a low commercial strip, a squat brick building beside the courthouse annex. 2 patrol cars sat out front. An American flag moved lazily over the parking lot. Mercer pulled into his usual space. Bring the pouch. Cody's stomach tightened. He followed him inside. The station smelled of burnt coffee, copier toner, and old air conditioning vents. At the front desk, Megan Price, 31, an administrative clerk, looked up from her computer. Good haul? Mercer held up the clear pouch. 2,300. Megan gave a small whistle. Busy day. Productive day. Cody watched her enter the seizure into the temporary log. Stop number, amount, $2,300, officer, Dale Mercer. Cody's own badge number appeared beneath it as assisting deputy. Malcolm had insisted that number be included. Now Cody understood why. Mercer leaned against the counter. Where's the sheriff? In his office. Tell him I'm adding another one to the board. Megan smiled politely. Cody did not. He looked down at the brass coin hidden in his palm. His phone was in his other pocket. For several seconds he considered searching the initials. Then he stopped himself. If Mercer saw, if the Bureau tracked access, if the coin was part of something bigger, he needed a private room. Bathroom, Cody muttered. Mercer waved him off. Try not to write a report in there. Cody walked quickly down the hall. He locked himself inside the single-stall restroom and leaned against the sink. For the first time, he opened his hand completely. The coin lay beneath the fluorescent light. Public integrity. He turned it over. VBPS, MR, ZO17. Cody pulled out his phone. He typed the letters slowly. Virginia Bureau Professional Standards. The results appeared. Cody stopped breathing for a second. Virginia Bureau of Professional Standards. Police misconduct. Integrity investigations. Civil rights compliance. Officer accountability. He looked at the coin again. M.R. Malcolm Reed. His stomach dropped. No. The word escaped before he could stop it. He searched the name. Nothing useful appeared publicly at first. That almost reassured him. Then he remembered academy training. State integrity investigators often worked quietly. Credentials were not something you found through a simple public search. The coin itself was enough. Cody gripped the sink. Mercer had not stopped a random consultant. They had searched an investigator, ignored his refusal, taken controlled-looking cash, forced him onto gravel, and said everything aloud. Cody remembered the quiet bulge beneath Malcolm's shirt. He had assumed it was fabric. Now he wondered if it had been a recorder. His face went pale in the mirror. A knock hit the door. Bennett? Mercer. Cody shoved the coin into his pocket. Yeah. You planning to rent the room? I'm coming. He splashed cold water on his face. When Cody stepped back into the hallway, Mercer was already moving toward the briefing room. Sheriff wants the numbers. Mercer sounded pleased. Cody followed. Sheriff Thomas Whitaker stood beside a whiteboard covered with monthly interdiction totals. At 61, Whitaker carried himself like a man who had spent years being greeted first. Silver hair, Crisp uniform, calm voice. Mercer placed the pouch on the table. 2,300. Whitaker looked impressed. From what? Suspicious cash. Charges? Not yet. Whitaker nodded, as though that answer were normal. Good work. Cody felt something inside him collapse. Mercer glanced at him. Bennett's getting sentimental. Whitaker looked over. Problem? Cody could have spoken. The coin was in his pocket. Malcolm's face was in his memory. The phrase came back. I'm making the record complete. Cody opened his mouth. Then the front desk phone rang. Megan answered. Her expression changed almost immediately. Yes, ma'am. Pause. Yes. Another pause. I'll get someone. She stood. Sheriff? Whitaker turned. There are people here asking for the evidence pouch from stop 417. Mercer frowned. Who? Megan looked toward the lobby. I don't know. A second later, 3 figures appeared beyond the glass security door. No uniforms, no marked vehicles, just dark suits and the unmistakable posture of people who had not come to ask permission. Captain Elaine Crawford entered first. Rachel Foster, 42, followed with a slim evidence case in one hand. Daniel Carter, 48, walked behind them carrying a sealed document envelope. Elaine stopped at the front desk. Good afternoon. Whitaker stepped into the hallway. Can I help you? Elaine displayed her credentials. Captain Elaine Crawford, Virginia Bureau of Professional Standards. The words hit Cody like a physical blow. Mercer's expression did not change yet. Whitaker's did, only slightly. Elaine continued. I need immediate custody verification for evidence associated with Stop 417. Mercer looked at Cody. Cody looked away. Whitaker cleared his throat. What's this regarding? Elaine's voice stayed calm. An active state investigation. Mercer gave a short laugh. Into what? Elaine finally looked directly at him. Sergeant Dale Mercer? Yeah. Her eyes moved to the nameplate on his uniform, then back to his face. Where is the evidence pouch? Mercer folded his arms. You don't walk into my station and start ordering evidence around without explaining yourself. Elaine did not react. Sheriff Whitaker, I'm asking you to preserve Stop 417 exactly as logged. No opening, no transfer, no modification. Whitaker looked toward Mercer. Bring it. Mercer stared at him. Shh, Sheriff. Bring it. Megan retrieved the pouch from temporary intake. Rachel photographed the seal. Daniel read the amount aloud. $2,300. Elaine checked the log. Assisting Deputy Cody Bennett, badge 2841. Cody's pulse jumped. Malcolm had made sure his number was there. Elaine looked at him. For half a second, her gaze dropped to his right pocket, the pocket holding the coin. Cody could not tell whether she knew. Mercer noticed none of it. He was too busy becoming angry. What exactly is going on? Elaine closed the logbook. You conducted the stop? Yes. Vehicle search? Yes. Consent obtained? Mercer paused. Probable cause. What probable cause? You want my report. Wait until it's finished. Elaine's expression did not change. Was the driver arrested? No. Charged? Citation. 4? 1 mile over. Rachel's eyes lifted. Daniel said nothing. Mercer felt the room turning against him and mistook that feeling for disrespect. I know how to do my job, Elaine answered quietly. I'm sure you believe that. Mercer took 1 step forward. Who filed the complaint? Elaine did not answer. Was it Reed? Still nothing. That guy doesn't know who he's dealing with. Cody closed his eyes for half a second. Elaine looked toward the side hallway. Actually, Sergeant, that's the part you seem to have misunderstood. A door opened. Footsteps crossed the tile. Mercer turned. Malcolm Reed walked into the sheriff's office wearing the same faded brown jacket. Dust still marked both knees of his pants. He had not changed, had not cleaned himself up, had not put on a suit. That made the silence heavier. Mercer stared. For a moment, confusion was stronger than anger. Then recognition. You. Malcolm stopped beside Elaine. His eyes moved first to the evidence pouch. The seal was intact. Then to Cody. Cody's hand instinctively touched the pocket containing the coin. Malcolm saw the movement. Said nothing. Mercer looked from Malcolm to Elaine. What is this? Nobody answered immediately. The front office had gone completely still. Megan stopped typing. Whitaker's face had lost color. Cody stood between the man he had obeyed and the man he had helped humiliate. Malcolm looked exactly as he had on the highway. Calm, dusty, ordinary. Except now 3 state investigators stood beside him. Mercer's confidence finally cracked. Only a hairline fracture. But Cody saw it. And as Malcolm stepped farther into the room, Mercer began to understand that the brass coin had not been the dangerous thing he missed. The dangerous thing was the man carrying it. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The sheriff's office hummed with fluorescent light and old air conditioning. Somewhere behind the front desk, a printer clicked once and stopped. The clear evidence pouch containing Malcolm's $2,300 sat beneath Rachel Foster's camera lens like the most important object in the building. Mercer looked at Malcolm, then at Elaine Crawford, then back at Malcolm. You filed a complaint already? Malcolm said nothing. Mercer's confidence tried to rebuild itself. A smirk appeared. You really came all the way back here because you lost some cash? Elaine turned toward him. Sergeant Mercer. He ignored her. You should have taken the receipt and gone home. Malcolm's expression remained still. Mercer continued. You think bringing state people in here changes what happened on that road? It does not, Malcolm said. Mercer almost smiled. Then Malcolm finished. It preserves it. The room went quiet again. Elaine stepped forward. Sergeant Dale Mercer, this is Senior Investigator Malcolm Reed with the Virginia Bureau of Professional Standards. Mercer stared at her. The sentence did not seem to register. Elaine repeated it more slowly. Senior Investigator Malcolm Reed. Malcolm did not reach for credentials. He did not straighten his shoulders. He did not perform authority. He simply stood there in the same faded work jacket Mercer had judged beside the highway. Dust still marked the knees of his pants. That detail seemed to bother Mercer most. You're telling me he works for you? Yes. What kind of investigator drives around dressed like that? Rachel Foster looked up from the evidence pouch. Daniel Carter's jaw tightened. Malcolm answered before anyone else could. The kind who needed to know how you treated people before you knew what they did for a living. Mercer's face changed. Not dramatically. A slight tightening around the eyes. A pause before his next breath. Sheriff Whitaker stepped closer. Dale. Mercer held up one hand. No, wait. He pointed toward Malcolm. So what? State sends somebody down here to bait me? Elaine's voice remained calm. No bait. 1 mile over. You stopped him. He had cash. It was documented. He refused a search. That is not evidence of criminal activity. Mercer looked at Whitaker. This is ridiculous. Whitaker did not defend him. That frightened Mercer more than anything Elaine had said. Cody stood near the wall, with one hand still touching the pocket containing the brass coin. He could hear Mercer's highway voice inside his head. Learn who gets believed. Now the room was full of people Mercer could not dismiss. And Cody understood how quickly Mercer's idea of credibility had changed. Elaine nodded toward Malcolm. He wasn't passing through your investigation, Sergeant. Mercer frowned. Elaine let the silence stretch. You stopped the investigator conducting it. The words landed harder than shouting would have. Megan Price's hand froze over her keyboard. Whitaker's face went pale. Cody looked at Malcolm. Mercer did not move. Then he laughed. It was a weak sound. You expect me to believe there was already an investigation? Malcolm reached beneath his shirt. For 1 second, Mercer's body tensed. Malcolm removed a small recording device. A tiny red light still blinked. He placed it on the counter. Click. Nothing about the sound was dramatic. Yet Mercer stared at the device as though it had struck the room like thunder. Malcolm pressed one button. His own calm voice emerged first. For the record, I do not consent to this search. Then Mercer's voice. For the record, I don't need your permission. Nobody spoke. The recording continued. Cody's voice. He refused consent. Mercer again. I heard him. Then the search. The white envelope. The money. Malcolm saying the withdrawal slip was inside. Mercer's laugh came through the speaker. Drug runners carry receipts too. Cody closed his eyes. Whitaker lowered his gaze. Mercer stood rigid. Malcolm stopped the recording. You want context? Mercer asked. His voice was louder now. I want the whole recording played. Elena nodded. We have the whole recording. Rachel opened her evidence case and removed another device. So do we. Mercer looked between them. Mercer looked. Elaine said, the vehicle audio transmitted remotely throughout the stop. The first real fear entered Mercer's expression. He turned toward Whitaker. Sheriff, I need counsel. You're entitled to counsel, Elaine said. I wasn't talking to you. No. You've spent most of today talking around the person you should have been listening to. Mercer's face reddened. Malcolm did not react. Elaine nodded to Rachel. Rachel pressed play again. Mercer's voice filled the station. Document whatever you want. Pause. Nobody's coming down here over $2,300. The sentence sounded different indoors. On the highway, Mercer had said it with certainty. Here, surrounded by state investigators, it sounded like confession. Cody looked toward the floor. Whitaker slowly removed his glasses. Mercer opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Rachel stopped the playback. Elaine looked directly at him. You were wrong. Mercer found his voice. About what? Somebody came. Malcolm's eyes shifted toward the evidence pouch. For a moment, he thought about Helen Brooks, Leon Harris, Denise Walker, Arthur Lewis. Nobody had come when their money disappeared. That truth prevented any satisfaction from reaching his face. Mercer noticed. What? You want me to apologize now? No, Malcolm said. Mercer gave a bitter laugh. Then what do you want? The truth. I gave you the truth. You gave us your version of a traffic stop. Malcolm stepped closer to the counter. The investigation is about the pattern. Something changed in Whitaker's posture. Mercer saw it. What pattern? Malcolm looked at him. 26 documented complainants before today. Mercer's jaw tightened. People complain. Cash seizures with almost no resulting convictions. That doesn't make the seizures unlawful. Repeated vehicle searches after consent was refused. Officer discretion. Repeated stops involving black motorists carrying documented cash. Mercer's face became harder. You calling me racist? Malcolm's voice remained steady. I'm telling you what the evidence will have to answer. Whitaker finally spoke. Elaine, what exactly have you already collected? The fact that he used her first name made Mercer turn. Elaine noticed too. Preliminary seizure data, complaint histories, county correspondence, traffic patterns. Whitaker swallowed. Correspondence? Arthur's letters. Malcolm watched the sheriff understand. Elaine continued. And now we have a controlled field observation conducted by a senior investigator. Mercer turned toward Cody. The younger deputy immediately knew what was coming. You knew? Cody shook his head. No. You saw something. Cody's hand remained over the pocket. Mercer stepped toward him. What did you see? Dale. Whitaker's voice stopped him. Mercer turned. The sheriff pointed toward Cody. Leave him alone. Mercer stared at the man who had praised his numbers for years. A crack had opened inside the hierarchy. Mercer could feel it. Elaine looked at Cody. Deputy Bennett, do you have something belonging to Investigator Reed? Cody's face drained. Malcolm said nothing. Cody slowly reached into his pocket. He opened his hand. The brass challenge coin lay against his palm. Scales of justice, public integrity. He placed it on the counter. Mercer stared at it. Rachel turned it over. VBPS MR 017. Elaine slid the coin toward Malcolm. He did not pick it up immediately. Mercer whispered, That was on the highway? Cody nodded. You saw it? Yes. And you didn't tell me? Cody looked at him. For the first time all day, there was no fear in his voice. You wouldn't have listened. Mercer went still. The sentence cut deeper because Cody had learned it from him. Whitaker backed toward the wall. Elaine began issuing instructions. Stop 417 remains sealed. No one accesses highway unit files without authorization. All relevant body camera, vehicle camera, and dispatch records are preserved immediately. No deletion, no alteration, no transfer. Whitaker nodded. Understood. Mercer looked at him. You're just giving them everything, Whitaker answered without looking back. Yes. Mercer laughed again. This time there was no humor left at all. This is over one traffic stop. Malcolm finally picked up the brass coin. His thumb moved once across the worn scales. Then he looked at Mercer. No. Mercer waited. Malcolm's voice became even quieter. This stop is simply the first one you made on someone who already knew where to look. Mercer stared. Behind Malcolm, Rachel closed the evidence case. Daniel sealed the first preservation order. Cody stood silent beside the wall, and Sheriff Whitaker looked like a man trying to remember every complaint letter he had ever signed without reading twice. Mercer pointed toward the evidence pouch. You got your money back. What else is there? Malcolm's eyes moved from the $2,300 to Mercer, then to Whitaker. The $189,000 is not the number you should be worried about. For the first time, Mercer said nothing, because somewhere beneath his anger, something else had begun to surface, a number he had never expected anyone outside the unit to calculate. The first discrepancy appeared before midnight. Rachel Foster sat in a temporary workroom inside the State Bureau's Richmond office with 3 screens glowing in front of her. On one screen were Ashford County seizure receipts. On another were evidence intake records. On the third were deposits made into county-controlled forfeiture accounts. They should have matched. They did not. Daniel Carter stood behind her with a legal pad. Run it again. Rachel did. Receipt by receipt, date by date, driver by driver. The number Ashford County publicly reported for the previous 18 months was $189,000. But when investigators added the amounts motorists said had actually been surrendered, then checked those figures against original roadside receipts and surviving body camera references, the total climbed. $197,600, then $204,300, then $211,900. By 1:17 in the morning, Rachel stopped typing. Daniel looked at the screen. $217,400. He pulled a chair closer. That can't be right. It's right. Difference? Rachel entered the final calculation. $28,400. For several seconds, neither spoke. The investigation had begun with a question about discriminatory policing. Now it had another question. Where had more than $28,000 gone? By sunrise, Elaine Crawford had authorized a full forensic audit. Malcolm arrived carrying coffee and wearing a clean shirt beneath the same faded jacket. He looked at the figures without speaking. Elaine watched him. You expected this? No. But you're not surprised. Malcolm thought about Mercer counting the $2,300 twice, about the satisfaction on his face. No, he said, I'm not. The audit widened. Investigators compared handwritten roadside amounts with evidence room intake logs. Some matched exactly. Others did not. One motorist surrendered $4,800. County records showed $4,000. Another surrendered $2,700. The official entry showed $2,200. A third receipt documented $3,100. Only $2,600 reached the county account. Small differences. 500 here, 800 there. Amounts easy to lose inside a system where the victims already expected nobody to believe them. But together, they formed a pattern. And one name appeared again and again at the point where the numbers changed. Dale Mercer. 2 days later, Cody Bennett entered the same conference room where Malcolm had helped prepare the undercover operation. He was no longer wearing his duty belt. His badge remained with Ashford County pending investigation. Elaine sat across from him. Rachel operated the recorder. Malcolm took the chair farthest from the door. Cody looked exhausted. I should have said something earlier. Elaine did not comfort him. Then say it now. Cody stared at his hands. Sometimes Mercer opened the pouches before final evidence intake. Rachel looked up. After they had been sealed? Yes. How? He'd say the count needed verification. Did you ever see money removed? Cody hesitated. Malcolm watched him. This was the moment silence either ended or changed shape. Yes, Cody said. The room became still. How many times? Elaine asked. I personally saw it twice. What happened? The first time he took cash out, counted it on the hood of the cruiser, then put most of it back. Most? Cody nodded. He kept several bills in his hand. What did you do? Nothing. His voice broke slightly. He swallowed. The second time I asked him about it. And? He told me the roadside count had been wrong. Did you believe him? Cody looked at Malcolm. No. Then why did you sign the paperwork? Cody's eyes dropped. Because I wanted to keep my job. Malcolm finally spoke. So did the people whose money you helped take. Cody flinched. Malcolm's tone was not cruel. That made it harder. Cody nodded slowly. I know. He told them more. Mercer sometimes handled evidence alone before logging. Sheriff Whitaker praised seizure totals during meetings. Complaint packets from Reverend Arthur Lewis had reached the sheriff personally. Cody had once seen 3 of them stacked beside Whitaker's desk. What happened to them? Elaine asked. Whitaker gave them to Mercer. Malcolm leaned forward. He gave complaints about Mercer to Mercer? Yes. What did Mercer do? Cody closed his eyes. Threw one in the trash. Malcolm sat back. Arthur had spent years choosing words carefully. Names, dates, amounts, addresses, copies, postage. Every envelope sent with the hope that somewhere inside government was one person willing to listen. And one of those envelopes had ended in a trash can beside the man it accused. The audit continued. No evidence showed Whitaker had personally pocketed seized cash. What investigators found was different. He had protected the system that produced it. Forfeiture revenue helped fund overtime, vehicles, equipment, and discretionary expenses. The higher Mercer's numbers climbed, the easier Whitaker's budget became. Complaints threatened that arrangement. So he had treated complaints as inconvenience. At an emergency county meeting, the evidence was presented behind closed doors. Whitaker resigned the next morning. His letter contained 6 sentences. None mentioned Helen Brooks, Leon Harris, Denise Walker, or Arthur Lewis. Mercer's outcome was more immediate. State investigators referred evidence to prosecutors involving suspected evidence theft, falsified records, obstruction, and civil rights violations. His law enforcement authority was suspended while the criminal case proceeded. The framed newspaper article celebrating his seizure record disappeared from the sheriff's office wall before lunch. Cody lost his badge too. His cooperation mattered. His silence also mattered. When Cody asked Malcolm whether helping now counted for anything, Malcolm answered carefully. It counts. Cody waited. But it doesn't erase what happened before. Cody nodded. I understand. Malcolm believed him. That did not mean Malcolm believed he should remain a deputy. Accountability, he had learned, meant refusing the easy lie that regret and innocence were the same thing. The hardest part came Friday evening. Open Table Community Kitchen glowed warm against the Richmond dusk. Malcolm entered through the side door. The smell of baked chicken, coffee, and warm bread filled the room. Leon Harris was tightening a loose hinge on a pantry cabinet. Denise Walker carried a tray from the kitchen. Arthur Lewis sat at his familiar table with the battered notebook closed beneath one hand. Helen Brooks sat across from him. They all looked up when Malcolm entered. Arthur smiled first. There's our compliance man. Malcolm stopped. He had faced armed officers with less difficulty than what waited in that room. Elaine had offered to come. He had declined. These people had spoken when nobody listened. He owed them his own voice. Malcolm removed his jacket and sat down. Arthur studied him. Something happened. Yes. Helen's hands tightened around her coffee cup. Malcolm looked at each of them. My name is Malcolm Reed. I'm a senior investigator with the Virginia Bureau of Professional Standards. Nobody moved. Denise slowly lowered the tray. Leon's screwdriver stopped turning. Arthur looked at Malcolm, then at his notebook. You knew. Not when I first came here. But later. Yes. Malcolm told them about the operation. The Honda, the $2,300, Mercer, Cody, the search, the evidence pouch. He did not describe the gravel dramatically. He did not need to. Helen understood before he finished. He made you sit down. Malcolm nodded. On the shoulder? Yes. Helen looked away. Leon's jaw tightened. Denise whispered, same as us. Malcolm continued. The cases are being reopened. Every documented seizure will be reviewed. The state is working to identify everyone entitled to restitution. Arthur opened his notebook. His fingers rested over the pages. For 3 years. I know. We sent these names for 3 years. I know. Helen looked directly at Malcolm. There was no celebration in her face. Only exhaustion. So what changed? Malcolm had known the question would come. He had feared it more than Mercer's anger, because there was no answer that could make the past fair. He looked at Helen. The investigation finally had evidence the system couldn't ignore. Helen's eyes stayed on him. We were evidence. Malcolm said nothing. Helen's voice remained quiet. My bank receipt was evidence. Yes. Leon's furnace money was evidence. Yes. Denise's statement was evidence. Yes. She touched Arthur's notebook. These names were evidence. Malcolm looked down. Yes. The room went silent. Outside, a Route 15 bus sighed to a stop at the curb. Arthur closed the notebook again. Helen asked one more question. What changed, Malcolm? This time he did not give her the institutional answer. He gave her the truth. Someone finally listened. Helen's eyes filled, but her voice stayed steady. We've been talking for years. Malcolm had no defense against that, and he did not try to invent one. Helen Brooks looked at him across the table. We've been talking for years. The room seemed to hold the sentence after she finished. No one rushed to soften it. Arthur Lewis kept one hand on the battered notebook. Leon Harris stared down at the screwdriver resting beside the loose pantry hinge. Denise Walker stood near the kitchen pass-through, still holding the edge of a warm tray. Malcolm sat with his hands folded. "You're right," he said. Helen's eyes lifted. No promise that the system had worked eventually. No speech about procedure. Just acknowledgement. "You were right before I got stopped," Malcolm continued. "You were right before anyone opened a formal case. And you should not have needed me sitting on that highway for somebody to believe you." Arthur slowly nodded. That was the first healing moment. Not restitution, not punishment. Truth spoken without being dressed up. The months that followed were quieter than the headlines made them seem. Sergeant Dale Mercer was charged based on the evidence gathered from the highway stops, altered seizure records, missing cash, and the recorded undercover operation. By the time his case reached sentencing, he had lost his badge, his position, and any chance of returning to law enforcement. The courtroom was full. Helen sat in the second row, Leon beside her, Denise behind them. Arthur had the notebook resting on his knees. Malcolm sat farther back. He did not want the proceeding to become a story about the investigator Mercer had chosen poorly. The judge spoke plainly. Mercer had used public authority to exploit motorists he believed lacked the resources or influence to challenge him. The missing money mattered. The falsified records mattered. But so did the pattern of choosing people because he expected their voices to carry less weight. Mercer listened without looking toward the gallery. His sentence was substantial. His law enforcement certification was permanently revoked. Restitution orders followed for identified victims. Nobody applauded. Malcolm was grateful for that. Justice did not need cheering. It needed completion. Sheriff Thomas Whitaker's resignation remained permanent. An independent review concluded that while investigators did not establish that Whitaker personally took seized cash, he had repeatedly ignored warning signs because the forfeiture program benefited his department. His official portrait came down from the courthouse hallway. The empty space on the wall stayed visible for months. Deputy Cody Bennett never returned to the Ashford County Sheriff's Office. His cooperation helped investigators reconstruct the evidence trail. But the review found that he had participated in searches and seizures he knew were questionable and failed to report what he had seen. Cody accepted that finding. The last time Malcolm spoke with him, they met in a plain state office corridor. Cody looked older than 28. "I keep thinking about the coin," he said. Malcolm waited. "If I hadn't seen it, I don't know if I would have ever said anything." Malcolm looked at him. "That's something you'll have to live honestly with." Cody nodded. "I know." He hesitated. "I'm sorry." Malcolm did not tell him it was all right. It wasn't. But he also did not humiliate him. "Then let what you do next mean something." Cody lowered his eyes. "I'll try." That was all Malcolm offered. Ashford County froze its highway forfeiture program pending outside oversight. State lawmakers later adopted stronger judicial review requirements for cash seizures and required racial impact reporting for highway interdiction units. The reforms were not perfect. Malcolm knew no law could manufacture courage inside a silent witness, but it made silence harder to hide behind paperwork. The restitution checks arrived slowly. Helen received her $3,600. She held the envelope at her kitchen table for nearly 10 minutes before opening it. The money was exactly what she had lost. But the moment that broke her was a letter attached to the check. It contained one sentence acknowledging that the seizure had been improper. Helen read it twice, then sat back and covered her mouth. Not because she suddenly felt rich, because after months of being treated as though her own money required someone else's permission, an institution had finally put in writing what she had known all along. Leon received $2,100. The furnace had already been replaced with borrowed money, but he used the restitution to pay off the debt. Denise received $1,150. Her sister had survived the rent crisis another way, but Denise still drove straight to her apartment with the check. They sat together at the kitchen table and cried over money that had stopped being about money a long time ago. Then came the county hearing. The room was packed. Wooden benches filled early. Reporters lined the back wall. Frank Miller came from Parker's corner and sat near the aisle. Sarah Collins sat 2 rows behind him. They had both watched Malcolm kneeling on that gravel. Neither had intervened. Sarah carried that silence with her. When Malcolm entered, she stood halfway, then stopped. He saw her. She looked ashamed. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. Malcolm could have walked past. Instead, he stopped. Sarah's voice trembled. "I knew it was wrong. I know. I was afraid. I know that too." She looked at him. "That doesn't make it better." "No." He let the words stand, then added, "But you're here now. Don't look away next time." Sarah nodded. Frank heard it. So did several people nearby. When the hearing began, officials expected Arthur Lewis to deliver prepared remarks. A county attorney had even placed a typed statement at the podium. Arthur ignored it. He carried his battered notebook instead. The room quieted as he opened it. He did not begin with Mercer. He did not begin with Malcolm. He began with Helen. Helen Brooks, then Leon. Leon Harris, then Denise. Denise Walker. He kept reading. Adult drivers, workers, retirees, veterans, neighbors. People who had been reduced for too long to seizure totals. Arthur gave each name the same weight. No dramatic pauses. No performance. Just recognition. When he reached the end of the documented list, he closed the notebook. "You saw dollar amounts," he said. His voice was calm. "These were names." Nobody moved. Arthur looked toward the county officials. "These people weren't invisible. You decided not to see them." The words settled over the room. Then Arthur looked toward the back. His eyes found Malcolm. For the first time, something clicked fully into place. The man in the faded jacket, the volunteer unloading canned goods, the quiet neighbor who never asked for anything, the investigator whose stop broke the case open. Arthur smiled faintly. "So that's who you were?" A few heads turned. Malcolm shook his head. "No, sir." Arthur raised an eyebrow. Malcolm looked around the room. "That's what I did." He nodded toward Helen, Leon, Denise, and the others. "Who I was never mattered more than who they were." The silence that followed was different from the silence at Parker's corner. That silence had protected power. This one acknowledged truth. Weeks later, Malcolm returned to Open Table Community Kitchen. No suit, no state vehicle, same faded jacket. Arthur was arranging canned goods. Helen was serving dinner. Leon repaired a loose pantry shelf. Denise carried warm trays beneath the yellow kitchen lights. Malcolm reached for a box near the loading door. Arthur slapped his hand away. "You're eating first tonight?" Malcolm smiled. "That an order?" "Yes." "Then I guess I have to respect authority." Arthur laughed. On the wall beside the old battered notebook sat a small wooden frame. Inside was the brass challenge coin. Scales of Justice. Public Integrity. VBPS. MR. 17. Beneath it, Arthur had placed a handwritten card. Power made them listen. Dignity was there before power arrived. Malcolm stood before it for a long moment. Then Helen called from the dining room. "Malcolm, your plate's getting cold." He turned. The room glowed with warm light. Forks touched plates. Coffee poured. People talked over one another. Nobody in that room needed to know what title Malcolm carried. Nobody needed to see the coin. He sat beside them as simply Malcolm. Outside, a Route 15 bus eased to the curb with a soft mechanical sigh. Its doors opened. More adults stepped into the Richmond evening. From inside open table came laughter, clinking dishes, and the low warmth of people sharing food beneath yellow lights. Malcolm looked around the table. The investigation had changed laws. It had ended careers. It had returned money. But the thing he hoped would last was simpler. Helen had always been worthy of being believed. Leon had always been worthy. Denise had always been worthy. Every name in Arthur's notebook had been enough before Malcolm Reed ever drove 1 mile into Ashford County. And if Malcolm had never carried that hidden badge, would anyone have finally listened? This story leaves us with a difficult truth. Silence doesn't stay neutral when someone with authority is doing wrong. It gives that authority more room to continue. Speaking up may carry a cost, but looking away can leave someone else paying an even greater one. So the next time you witness someone being treated unfairly, do one small thing Malcolm's witnesses struggled to do. Stay present. Remember what happened. And speak truthfully when you're able. You may never know whether your voice becomes the one piece of evidence someone desperately needed. If you had been standing at Parker's corner while Malcolm sat on that gravel, would you have spoken up or stayed silent? Tell me below. And stay with me, because the next story begins with another ordinary moment that is not nearly as ordinary as it looks.